outside. It is pouring with rain, so I can't go out in the garden and do anything. I can't even go down the allotment and do anything. And it's a little bit too early to do much in the greenhouse, so I'm stuck at home. So what is the best thing to do when it's pouring with rain outside and you can't go outside and do anything in the garden? Well, it's to stay inside and do some cooking. So what I'm going to show you today are roasted onions with pancetta and parmesan. They make a lovely and tasty addition to your dinners. So let me show you how to make them. Now here you can either do this recipe with all white onions or all red onions, but I like to do it with a mixture of both because I find that the red onions are slightly sweeter and they've got a milder flavour, whereas the white onions or the brown onions have a slightly sort of stronger flavour, and the combination of both of them together goes really well. Now the first thing that we need to do is we need to cut these. Now you can see that they're all varying in size, so let's take the small ones first. What you need to do is you need to chop off the top section but leave the root section attached, because the root section will actually hold the rest of the onion together. So with a nice sharp knife, and making sure that you keep your fingers out of the way, take off the top section. And then with this onion, because it's quite small, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it in half, but through the roots. And then we have a flat surface to lie it on. Get any of the little bits off of the board. And then what I want to do is I want to cut this again. I'll cut this small one in quarters, and again cut it straight from the root section straight through to the top like this. Okay, now you can see that it's all holding together because we have left the root attached. Now if you do find that you've got any sort of little stringy bits of root left on there, just very carefully pull those off. Now once you've cut your onion, it's much easier to peel it. So you want to take off the outer papery skin. So take all of those off, pull them down from the top down to the root, and then you can just pull it off, and you should be left with a section of onion like this. Now with the red onion, I'm going to cut it again from the top, leaving the root attached, but because it is much bigger, I think I'm most probably going to have to cut this into about 6. If you've got an onion even bigger, you're going to have to cut it into 8. So I'll carry on cutting all of these into chunks, and then when I've done that, I will show you. So there we have the onions. As I say, I cut the white ones in 4s, and I cut the red ones in 6 because they were that much bigger. If you do find that any of the sections do fall out, don't worry about them. I know they seem quite large chunks. If you want to make them smaller, please feel free to do so. But just remember that when they're in the oven, they will sort of go down quite a lot. Now spread them out on a tray and drizzle a little bit of olive oil over the top. It's a couple of tablespoons, and then also put on some salt and pepper. Okay, just like that. What you need to do now is you need to make sure that all of them are covered. So you can do this in a plastic bag if you don't want to get your hands dirty, but just make sure that you mix them all round really well like this, so that they're all coated in the oil, and then make sure that they're spread out on the tray just like this. And now let's put them in the oven. Now the oven has been set to gas mark 5, and you want to place the tray of onions on the shelf that's in the middle of the onions. Just push them in there, close the door, and leave them to cook for about 30 to 35 minutes. Now while the onions are in the oven, what you'll need to do is you'll need to cook your pancetta. So get a frying pan or a skillet pan and put a little bit of olive oil in there, not much. Turn the heat on, and when it comes up to temperature, what we're going to do is we're going to put our pancetta in here. Now the oil's nice and hot, so I'm going to turn the temperature down a little bit and pour in the pancetta. Make sure you get every little bit of it. You don't want to put too much oil in here because the pancetta has a lot of fat in here as well, and it will just let all that fat out. So you need to cook this pancetta until it's lovely and crisp and brown. Now the pancetta has been cooking for about 10 minutes, and it takes that long for it to get nice and brown like this. If you do find that as you're cooking it, you get an awful lot of juice in here, then it won't brown the pancetta. So you need to very carefully pour it out and put it into a mug, because you will need that later because that will be fat. So let's turn this off, and what we need to do now is we need to strain this out using a slotted spoon, drain out all the pancetta and put it onto some kitchen towel so that it will get rid of any excess fat. So there's all the pancetta on some kitchen towel. Make sure you put it in a nice thin layer so that it all dries out, and any fat that's still left in the pan, just leave there because we will use that again in a minute. Just put it to one side on the hob so that it cools down. Now when your onions have been in the oven for about 15 minutes, just pull them out slightly and just give them a slight turning over. You can see that they are colouring up beautifully. Obviously, depending on the size that your onion sections are in, depends how long, that one doesn't want to turn over, how long you'll need to cook them for. So you're just going to have to maybe adjust your times ever so slightly. So once you've turned them over, put them back in the oven for about another 10 to 15 minutes. Now the onions have been in for another 10 minutes, and as you can see, they are beautiful and brown, and they are lovely and soft to touch. So these are ready to come out, so I'm going to take them out of the oven and leave them on the side to rest just for about 5 minutes. Now once we'd drained out the pancetta, there was a little bit of fat that was left in there. Okay, you only need about a tablespoon in there, so if you've got any more than a tablespoon, then take it out. Reheat that fat, which won't take long, because we're going to just put the onions in here just for a few minutes, because there's lots of pancetta flavours in here, and we want that to get into the onions as well. Now if we do look at the onions, hopefully you can see that actually some of them have opened up, which is great because all those pancetta flavours will then get straight into the onion. What I'm going to do now that the oil is heated up is I'm very carefully going to put these onions in that fat and just give them a little toss just for a few minutes, and I'm also going to add the drained pancetta as well. So just give this a very careful toss all the way through, just for a couple of minutes, so that the onions absorb that little bit of oil that's there. Don't have the temperature on too high, okay? You just need to heat it through so that the onions can absorb all of that flavour, and once you've tossed them and they've been cooking just for a few minutes, then we need to take them off of the heat and put them in a dish. Okay, so we will just then place them in a serving dish, or you could stick them straight onto a plate, a dinner plate. Spread them out a little bit, and then the last thing that we need to put on top is we just need to shave some parmesan on top. Now these onions would go brilliantly with some very good quality sausages and some mashed potatoes. You could have some onions on the side and also then put some gravy on. So there we are, roasted onions with pancetta and some Parmesan cheese. Well, there you have it. I hope you give this recipe a go, and if you want to know any more about how to grow your own onions, you can always buy my ebook, which will give you everything that you need to know. Well, I hope you found that useful, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.